Hello and welcome to the last video of the day. This is my fourth one. I don't usually do that many in one day. But then again, it's not usually 105 degrees outside. And there's supposed to be a concert I'm supposed to be at today. It's an outdoor concert at Liberated Tar Pits, but I decided 105 degrees outside. No, I don't really want to sink into the tar or become the tar, but thank you very much. All right. As the normal intro says, let's get down to business. Now, normally I do news stories. But this time, I'm going to do a TV show review, and I do lots of those. But this one, if it feels like a hybrid, I apologize. So William Shatner has a new show called The Unxplained. And needless to say, I was on the second episode, and I was watching it, and I'll get into more detail later about it, but I'm thinking, oh, I've seen all these places. Well, not all of them. I've seen several of these places before. Oh, yeah, I've seen them on In Search Of when I was a very small child. And In Search Of was hosted by Leonard Nimoy. Leonard Nimoy, of course, sadly has passed away. But he was a co-star in the TV show Star Trek. He played Mr. Spock, along with William Shatner, who played Captain Kirk on the TV show. Their ranks changed as they went into the movies. You know, so it was in the second episode, and I'm like, okay, so I've seen these places before. I've seen them on the show. Like, interesting. I wonder if he did this as some type of tribute. Well, apparently I'm not the only one to think the same question. So Fox News has, way back on July 18th, William Shatner shares touching Leonard Nimoy memory and explains why he's taking on the Unxplained. Yeah, there's a reason there's a comma there, and I'll show you why. Because he says something that I only half believe. Fox News, what was it about the Unxplained that drew you in? William Shatner, we lead our lives in mystery, don't we? Everything about coming into the world itself. The more we find out about the world, the more intriguing and unknown. All right, I'll stop. My horrible William Shatner impersonation that sometimes I just do on accident on this channel. So, let's get down to the next one, because that's where the meat is. Some have claimed that the show was inspired by Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of from the 70s. Is that true? Shatner, well, I don't think so. In Search Of? I don't remember it too well. That part I believe. In the early 70s and mid and late 70s, he was working in a million TV movies and B-rated horror movies. He was... and TV shows, he's always worked his butt off. And so the fact that he doesn't remember it, completely reasonable. The next part, not so reasonable. But In Search Of, Unxplained, and all the mystery shows that are on television are basically looking for an explanation or examining some mysterious thing. We're all searching for knowledge, but the answers come out differently. Not really, especially when they hit the same topics. Okay, so there's the news tie-in. Let's get to the review. It goes like this. So here's the show, The Unxplained. The first thing I want to know is, explain to me what the frick happened to the E in the word unexplained. I understand that with computer searches, it helps to do things really weird. And by doing things really weird, it makes it easier to find. Where in the old days, like if you were a musician, you would choose the first letter of the name of your band, if you were smart, based on where you wanted it to be placed in the record store. So if you were an A, you would be really hard to find because you'd be at the very beginning, and people, they don't tend to look at the very beginning. So you really wanted to be around C, or maybe even L, possibly P. It worked out pretty good for Pink Floyd. And it worked out pretty good for Led Zeppelin, because you were right there in the middle. You were in the heart of the record store. Well, we zip into the future when we have computer search, and suddenly names like, well, Pink Floyd still works, and Led Zeppelin works because they spelled it wrong. But if you were a band like Giant, which was a band from the 90s, highly recommend them, by the way. The first and second album were really good. Third album, they waited too long, and it didn't have the same texture. Anyways, trying to find Giant online was really hard for a long time, and eventually the search companies allow you now to type in, instead of typing in Giant and hoping you find it, you type in Giant and the word band, and that seems to bring it up really, really fast. So they've got stuff behind the scenes that categorizes it much, much, much quicker than it did when search engines were growing up. The Unexplained is missing an E. Okay, so the first episode is Evil Places, and it's about haunted houses and things of that style. And it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. And then you get to Mysterious Structures, and that's the one that's like, whoa, there is a bunch of In Search of places on this, with some subtle updates. And it was enjoyable. Strange Creatures, to each their own. Wasn't my thing. Unnatural Nature, that one was really good because it goes to different places around the country that have different, different philosophies, like Devil's Peak or Devil's, no, what's that? The one in Wyoming, the big old Devil Mountain, whatever it's called. And the American Indians are like, dude, we worship that place. It's awesome. And then the park ranger's like, hey, if it wasn't for Close Encounters of the Third Kind, we had nobody here, and now we can't shake them. Hoily they. Okay, so anyway, that one's really good. Unnatural Nature, that one we just did. Bizarre Rituals. That one really reminded me a lot of the episode, several episodes actually, of God with Morgan Freeman, which is on, I think, National Geographic Channel. And so he goes over a lot of bizarre rituals on his show. He's got 3 seasons. They just had the new season drop this summer. Life Beyond Death. Now that one I thought he would save till the end. And I say that because in watching many, many, many shows that are hosted by William Shatner, where he's in charge, he's obsessed with death. He's always been, well, I shouldn't say always, but for the last 20 years, he's been very, very obsessed with death. You watch his Star Trek interviews with the other captains, and he always gets to us like, well, what do you think about the afterlife? What do you think about the afterlife? He doesn't want to die. He said so several times. Leonard Nimoy said in an interview where they were going back and forth on a documentary called Mind Meld. Also recommend that if you're a Star Trek fan, otherwise possibly not. And Nimoy was he's like, okay, I understand death. It's going to happen. And he got there. And another thing about those two guys, most people don't recognize, William Shatner was 2 days older than Leonard Nimoy. And their birthdays are 2 days apart. Same year. Even everybody thought Nimoy was way older. No, Shatner's older by 2 days. Okay. Next episode. Oh, so Life Beyond Death. So I wasn't surprised that he took that, but I'm surprised he put it there because on all the other shows, he always saves it for the last thing. Mysteries of the Mind. Woo, that was really good from science point of view. Seriously, some cool science in that one. And then Incredible Survivors. This one was a whole lot of sizzle and not necessarily a lot of steak. Some of the territory has been gone over on In Search of and lots of other shows. But there was a bunch of stories like, okay, that's just reality TV. Okay, now, so there's the rundown of how that went. Comparing it to In Search of. In Search of was in the 70s, and they would constantly write on the screen, this is a reenactment, it's not the real thing. You will not find that it's a reenactment written anywhere on the modern show. It's one of the few times that you actually see a show expressing to the audience, we recognize that you get that this is not the real thing, and we're just redoing it. So I appreciated that. I hold no angst against In Search of doing it in the 70s. It was a different time. Okay. The other thing is, they both have on their show, and Shatner does it. Shatner has more PhDs and doctors than not. But there's one episode where he just unleashes forgive me if you're in this group. I don't mean it in a mean way. He unleashes the wackos. The people that are just all about, well, the George Norrie crowd. Why do I say George Norrie? Because George Norrie's on this. If you don't know who George Norrie is, look him up. Okay, because trust me, George Norrie, he's got a fan base. I used to listen to him a lot. Anyways, so the George Norrie crowd really comes out of the woodworks on only one episode. Everybody else is pretty much on the hosh-posh of like, oh yes, it's legitimate science, etc. And In Search of was like that as well, where they spent mostly the time with the legit science, and then they would go into the, well, we tried the real thing, let's go to the other thing. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, now, another difference. Shatner tries to be funny a lot on this. Shatner can be very funny. He was great in Airplane 2. He may have been the only thing great in Airplane 2. And he's been funny in lots and lots of stuff. He was fantastic in Star Trek V. I know I'm the only person on planet Earth besides Shatner that likes Star Trek V, but he was really funny in that too. He wrote the script. Why not? He's not funny in this. He tries to be funny. He's not. Honestly, that's not a big deal. But what I'm trying to say is this show consciously doesn't take itself too seriously. He's horsing around about 10 or 15% of the time. I don't recall In Search of with Leonard Nimoy ever horsing around and not taking things to the top seriously. But In Search of was the very first program like that. In Search of invented all of these other shows that have followed 20, 30 years later, 40 years later, with the History Channel and National Geographic and everything. Not the nature documentaries, but the exploring minutia and bringing it out of oddities, strange science things, and he began everything. Without In Search of, cable, do you remember cable? Cable was there before people cut all the cords and started streaming for far more money than they paid for cable when they were complaining. He did that, and it was I'm grateful he did, because I enjoy it. History Channel owes its debt to In Search of. National Geographic, not the animal documentaries, but the other ones, owes a debt to In Search of. And so does William Shatner, even if he doesn't want to acknowledge it. And that may be out of financial reasons tied into the network. Because if he gives too much credit, then they literally have to pay for it. They have to pay copyright. So that's most likely the reason he did it. Okay, other differences. The other difference is, well, let's see, the theme song of In Search of was way, way, way better, but the idea is the same. Now, you see, In Search of was brought back also by History Channel, and it's hosted by Zachary Quinto, which, of course, is a joke because, and I mean ha-ha joke, because he played Mr. Spock in the movies, and Leonard Nimoy, so he's just following that. It's like, oh, ha, 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 I get it. Are you going to try and marry his wife, too? Probably not, because Zachary Quinto doesn't like girls that way. Okay, what else is there for comparison? So overall, I would say the Unexplained, except for the fact that it's missing the... Oh, another thing about that, the way they highlight the X. Because they highlight the X, and in particular the episode of Strange Creatures. Strange Creatures episode starts out almost exactly the same as either the first or second episode of, and I mean the first or second episode of the X-Files, way back when, with the Jersey Devil. And they didn't talk about the Jersey Devil. I'm like, why not? You just set it up almost exactly like the beginning of that show. But what I'm trying to get at here is the Unexplained with the X. The music is borrowed. It borrows from the X-Files a lot. Instead of borrowing from the Twilight Zone, which Shatner was on 2 episodes of, they borrow a lot from the X-Files with the Unexplained. But at least X-Files was spelled right. Okay. Anything else to cover on this show? No, it was a good time. I enjoyed it. There was only the one episode that I felt really didn't do anything for me, which was the Strange Creatures. Because it was just more fun on the X-Files to watch that one. And let's see, what else was... Mysteries of the Mind. Wow, if you're a scientist or you like science, you got to check that one out. Life Beyond Death. If you like the episode of Life Beyond Death, highly recommend checking out the one by Morgan Freeman on God. All seasons, because he gets into that. That's all he does. It's really good stuff. Okay, and I guess that's it. Hope you enjoy it, and yes, it's still really, really hot. We hope you enjoyed the content, and if you did, feel free to like, subscribe, come on back anytime. You're always welcome here as part of the family, and we'll see you in the future.